The Rape of a Lock by Alexander Pope. Part 1. What dire offence from amorous causes springs, what mighty contest rise from trivial things. I sing this verse to see, muse, is due. This even Belinda may vouchsafe to view. Slight is the subject, but not so the praise, if she inspire and he approve my lays. Say what strange motive, goddess, could compel a well-bred lord to assault a gentle belle, or say what stranger cause yet unexplored could make a gentle belle reject a lord. And dwells such rage in softest bosoms when, and lodge such daring souls in little men. Sold through white curtains shot a timorous ray, and ope those eyes that must eclipse the day. Now lapdogs give themselves a rousing shake, and sleepless lovers just as 12 awake. Thrice rung the bell, the slipper knocked the ground, and the pressed watch returned a silver sound. Belinda still a downy pillow pressed, her guardian swift prolonged the balmy rest. 'Twas yet summoned to a silent bed, of the morning dream that hovered over her head. A youth more glittering than a birthnight dew, that even in slumber caused a cheek to glow, seemed to her ear his whining lips to lay, and was in whisper said, or seemed to say, "Fairest of mortals, thou distinguished care of thousand bright inhabitants of air, if e'er one vision taught by infant thought, of all the nurse and all the prized have taught, of airy elves by moonlight shadows seen, with silver token and with circlet green, or virgins visited by angel powers, with golden crowns and wreaths of heavenly flowers, hear and believe, thy own importance know, nor bound by narrow views to think below. Some secret truths from learned pride concealed, to maids alone and children are revealed, what woe no credit doubting wits may give, the fair and innocent shall still believe. Now when unnumbered spirits around we fly, the light militia of the lower sky, these, woe unseen, are ever on the wing, hang over the box and hover round the ring. Think what an happy page thou hast an air, and view with scorn 2 pages and a chair. As now your own our beings were of old, and once enclosed in woman's beauteous mould, whence by a soft transition we repair from earthly vehicles to wheeze of air. Think not, when woman's transient breath is fled, but all her vanities at once are dead. Succeeding vanity she still regards, and though she plays no more overlooks the cards, her joy in gilded chariots when alive, and love of ombre after death survive. For when the fair in all their pride expire, to their first elements the souls retire. The sprites of fiery termagants at flame mount up and take a salamander's name. Soft yielding minds to water glide away, and sip with nymphs the elemental tea. The graver prude sinks downward to a gnome, in search of mischief still on earth to roam. The light conquests and sylphs aloft repair, and sport and flutter in the fields of air. Now farther, yet, whoever fair and chaste rejects mankind, is by some sylph embraced. For spirits, freed from mortal laws, with ease assume what sexes and what shapes they please, what guards the purity of melting mates and courtly balls and midnight masquerades, save from the treacherous friend and daring spark, the glance by day, the whisper in the dark. When kind occasion prompts the warm desires, the music softens, and when dancing fires. 'Tis but the sylph, the wise celestials know, for honor is the word with man below. Some nymphs there art, too conscious of her face, for life but distance to the gnome's embrace. We swell their prospects and succeed their pride, when offers are disdained and love denied. When gay ideas crowd the vacant brain, while peers and dukes and all their sweeping train, and garters, stars, and currents appear, and in soft sounds your grace salutes their ear. 'Tis these that early taint the female soul, instruct the eyes of young coquettes to roll, teach infants' cheeks a bidden blush to know, and little hearts to flutter at a view. Oft on the world imagine woman stray, the sylphs from mystic mazes guide her way. Through all the giddy circle they pursue, and old impertinence expiate by new. What tender maid but must the victim fall to one man's treat, but for another's ball? When Floria speaks, what virgin could withstand, if gentle Damon did not squeeze her hand? The varying vanities from every part, we swift the moving toy-shop of her heart. Her wigs, with sword not strife, views banish views, and coaches drive. With erring mortals levity may call, and blind the truth. The sylphs contrive it all. Of these am I, who thy protection claim, a watchful spirit, and Ariel is my name. Late as I ranged the crystal wilds of air, in the clear mirror of thy ruling star I saw, alas, some dread event impend, ere to the main this morning sun descend. But heaven reveals not what, or how, or where, warned by the sylphs, O pious maid, beware. This to disclose is all thy guardian call, beware of all, but most beware of man. He said, when shock, who thought she slept too long, leaped up and waked his mistress with his tongue. Trust when Belinda reports say true, thy eyes first opened on the billet dokes, wounds, charms, and ardours were no sooner read, what all the vision vanished from thy head. and now unveiled the toilet stands displayed, each silver vase in music order laid. First dropped in white, the nymph intent adores, with head uncovered the cosmetic powers, and heavenly image in the glass appears. Toward she bends, toward her eye she rears, the inferior priestess at the altar's side, trembling begins the sacred rites of pride. Unnumbered treasures ope at once, and here the various offerings of a world appear. From each she unites the cults with curious toil, and decks the goddess with a glittering spoil. This casket India's glowing gem unlocks, and all Arabia breathes from yonder box. But horse here and elephant are night, transformed to combs, the speckled and the white. Here files of pins extend the shining rows, puffs, powders, patches, Bibles, billet dogs. No awe for beauty puts on all its arms. The fair each moment rises in her charms, repairs her smiles, awakens every grace, and calls forth all the wonder of her face. Sees by degrees a pure blush arise, and keener lightnings quicken in her eyes. The busy serfs surround the darling care. We set the head, and rose divide the hair. Some fold the sleeves, while others plait the gown, and Betty's praised for labours not her own. Part 2. Not with more glorious in the ethereal plain, the sun first rises over the purpled main, when issuing forth a rival of his beams launched on the bosom of a silver Thames. Fair nymphs and well-dressed youths around her shone, but every eye was fixed on her alone. On her white breast a sparkling cross she wore, which Jews might kiss and infidels adore. Her lively looks as brightly mind disclose, quick as her eyes and as unfixed as woes. Favours to none, to all she smiles extends, oft she rejects, but never once offends. Bright as the sun her eyes the gazers strike, and like the sun they shine on all alike. That graceful ease and sweetness void of pride might hide her faults, if Bellis had faults to hide. If to her share some female errors fall, look on her face and you'll forget them all. This nymph to the destruction of mankind nourished two locks, which graceful hung behind in equal curls, and well conspired to deck with shining ringlets a smooth iron neck. Love in these labyrinths the slaves detains, and mighty hearts are held in slender chains. With hairy springies we the birds betray, slight lines of hair surprise the finely prey. Fair tresses man's imperial race ensnare, and beauty draws us with single hair. The range's baron the bright locks admired, he saw, he wished, and to the prize aspired. Resolved to win, he meditates the way, by force to ravish or by fraud betray. For when success a lover's toil attends, few ask if fraud or force attained his end. For this was a rose he had implored, propitious heaven and every power adored, but chiefly loves to love an altar built of 12 fast French romances neatly gilt. Where lay Frigatas, half a pair of gloves, and all the trophies of his former loves. With tender millet dogs he lights the pure, and breathes through emerald sights to raise the fire. Then prostrate falls and begs of ardent eyes, soon to obtain, and long possesses the prize. The powers gave ear, and granted half his prayer, the rest the winds dispersed in empty air. But now secure the painted vessel gilds, and sunbeams trembling on the floating tides, while melting music steals upon the sky, and softened sounds along the waters die. Smooth flow the waves, the sapphire gently play, Belinda smiled, and all the world was gay. All but the sylph, with careful thoughts oppressed, impending woes sate heavy on his breast. He summoned straightest devices of air, the lucid squadrons around his sails repair. Soft over the shrouds aerial whispers brief, that seemed but sapphires to the trained Beneth. Some to the sun their insect wings unfold, away from the breeze or sink in clouds of gold. Transparent forms to find from mortal sight, their fluid bodies half dissolved in light. Loose to the wind, where airy garments flew, thin, glittering textures of a filmy dew, dipped in richest tinctures of the skies, where light disports and every mingling dies, while every beam new transient colours flings, colours that change whenever they wave their wings. Amid the circle on the gilded mast superior by the head was Ariel placed. His purple pinions opening to the sun, he raised his azure wand and thus begun. Ye sylphs and sylphites, to your chief give ear, face, fairies, genii, ills, and demons here. Ye know the spheres and various tasks assigned by laws eternal unto the aerial kind. Some in the fields of purest Edeln play, and bask and whiten at the blaze of day. Some guide the course of wandering orbs on high, or roll the planets through the boundless sky. Some less you find beneath the moon's pale light, hover and catch the shooting stars by night. Or suck the mists and grosser air below, or dip the pinions in the painted bow, or brew fierce tempest on the windy main, or over the glebe distill the kindly rain. Others on earth over human race preside, watch all the ways and all the actions guide, or feast the chief the care of nations own, and guard with arms divine the British throne. Our humbler province is to tend the fair, not a less pleasing or less glorious care, to save a power from too rude a gale, not let the imprisoned excesses exhale, to draw fresh colours from the vernal flowers, to steepen rainbows ere they drop in showers, a brighter wash, to curl the waving hairs, assist their blushes, and aspire their airs. Lie oft in dreams inventions we bestow, to change a flounce or add a fur below. The stay black omens fret the brightest fair, that e'er deserve the watchful spirit's care. Some dire disaster, or by force or sleight, but what or where the fates have wrapped in night. Whether the nymph shall break Diana's law, or some fair china jar receive a flaw, or stain her honour or her new brocade, forget a praise or miss a masquerade, or lose a heart or necklace at a ball, or whenever heaven has doomed the shock must fall. Haste when, ye spirits, to your charge repair, where fluttering fan be Sephiroth's care, which droops to we, brilliant we consign, and momentia let the watch be wine. The woe crisp Pissa tend their favourite lock, Ariel himself shall be the guard of shock. To 50 chosen stiffs of special note, we trust the importance charts the petticoat. Oft have we known with sevenfold fence to fail, though stiffed with hopes and armed with ribs of whale, from a strong line about the silver bone and guard the wide circumference around. Whatever spirit, careless of his charge, his post neglect, or leaves the fair at large, shall feel sharp vengeance soon overtake his sins, be stopped in wilds or transfixed with pines, or plunked in legs of bitter washers lie, or wedged whole ages in a bodkin's eye. Gums and pomatum shall his flight restrain, while Cloxy beats his silken wings in vain, or Elam still fixed with contracting power shrink his vine essence like a raveled flower, or as Ixen fixed, the red shall feel the giddy motion of whirling mill, and fumes of burning chocolate shall glow, and tremble at the seaweed throats below. He spoke, the spirits from the sails descends, as some, orb and orb, around the nymph extend, some frit the mazy ringlets of her hair, some hang upon the pendants of her ear. With beating hearts the dire event they wait, anxious and trembling for the birth of fate. Part 3. Close by whose meads for ever crowned with flowers, where Thames with pride surveys its rising towers, where stands a structure of majestic frame, which from the neighbouring Hampton takes its name. Here Britain's statesmen oft the fall for doom, of foreign turns and of nymphs at home. Here thou great Anna, whom free realms obey, dost sometimes conceal, take and sometimes tea. Either the heroes and the nymphs resort to taste the wilder pleasures of a court. In various talk the instructive hours they passed, who gave a ball or paid the visit last. One speak the glory of a British queen, and one describes a charming Indian screen. A third interprets motions, locks and eyes, and every word a reputation dies. Snuff of a fan, supply each pause a chat, of singing, laughing, ogling, and all that. Meanwhile declining from the noon of day, the sun obliquely shots his burning ray. The hungry judges soon the sentence sign, and wretches hang that juryman may dine. The merchant from his exchange returns in peace, and the long labours of a toilet cease. Belinda now, whom first of fame invites, burns to encounter two adventurous knights. And Rombo single to decide their doom, and swells her breast of conquest yet to come. Straight the three bands prepare in arms to join, each band the number of sacred 9. Soon as she spreads her hand, where Ariel guard descant, and sit on each important card. First Ariel pitched upon a matador, when each according to the rank they bore. For Sylphs, yet mindful of their ancient race, are as when woman wonders found a place. Behold, 4 kings in majestic rivet, with hoary whiskers and a forky beard, and 4 fair queens, whose hands sustained a flower, the expressive emblem of their softer power. 4 knaves and carps succeeded, a trusty band, caps on their heads and halberds in their hand, and party-coloured troops, a shining train, draw forth to combat on the velvet plain. The skilful nymph revives her force with care. Let spades her trumps, she said, and trumps there were. Now move to war her sable matadors, and show like leaders of swarthy Moors. Spadilio first, unconquerable lord, led off 2 captive trumps, and sweep the board, as many more Manillo forced to yield, and marched a victor from the verdant field. Him Buster followed, but his fate more hard, gained but 1 trump and 1 plebeian card. With a sport's sabre next achieved in years, the hoary majesty of spades appears. Puts forth 1 manly leg, to sight revealed, rest his many-coloured robe concealed. The rebel knave who dares his prince engage, proves the just victim of his royal rage. Even mighty Pam the kings and queens overthrew, and motored down armies in the flights of Loo. Said a change of war, now destitute of aid, falls undistinguished by the victor shade. Thus far both armies to Belinda yield, now to the barren fate inclines the field. As warlike Amazon her host awaits, the imperial consort or crown of spades. The clubs black turned first the victim died, spite of his haughty mien and barbarous pride. What boots the rigid circle in his hand, his giant limbs and the state unwielding speed? but long behind the trades his pompous robe, and all the monarch's only graced the globe. The baron now his diamonds pours apace, the embroidered king nor shows but half his face, and his refulgent queen with powers combined, of broken troops and east conquest find. Clubs, diamonds, hearts, and wild disorder seen, with throngs promiscuous strove a level green. Was when this Pieter rode army runs of Asia's troops and Afric's sable sons, with like confusion different nations fly in various habits and of various dye. The pierce battalions dice united fall in heaps on fate overwhelms them all. The knave of diamonds now tries his wily arts and wins our shameful charts. The queen of hearts at whisk the blood the virgin cheek forsook, and livid paleness breeds over all her lock. She sees and trembles at the approaching ill, just in the jaws of ruin and cordial, and now, as soft in some distempered state, on one night's trick depends the general fate. An ace of hearts steps forth, the king unseen lurked in a hand, and mourned his captive queen. He springs to Vanagons with an eager pace, and falls like thunder on the prostrate ace. The nymph exulting fills with shouts the sky, the walls, and long handles reply. O thoughtless mortals, ever blind to fate, too soon dejected and too soon elate, suddenly his honours shall be snatched away, and cursed for ever this victorious day. For lo, the board with cups and spoons is crowned, the berries crackle and the mill turns around. On shining altars of Japan they rise, the silver lamp, the fire's bright blaze. On silver spouts the grateful liquors glide, and China's earth receives the smoking tide. At once we gratify the scant and taste, the frequent cups prolong the rich repast. Straight through the round with fair her airy band, some as she sips with human liquor fanned, some over her lip their careful plums displayed, trembling and conscious of rich brocade. Coffee which makes the politic wise, and see through all things with his half-shut eyes, send up and vapor to the baroon's brain, and new stratagems the radiant lock to gain. Yet she's rash youth, desist ever 'tis too late. Fear the just gods, and think of Scylla's fate. Changed to a bird, and sent to flit in air, she durely pays for Nisus' injured hair. But when to mischief mortals bend their will, how soon they find fit instruments of ill. Just when Clarissa drew with tempering grace a two-edged weapon from a shining case. So ladies and Romans assist their knight, present with spears, and arm him for the fight. He takes the gift of reverence, and extends the little engine on his finger's end. This just behind Belinda's neck is spread, as over the fragrant steam she bends her head. Swift to the lock, 1,000 sprites repair, 1,000 wings by turns blow back the hair, and thrice they twitch the diamond in her ear. Thrice she looked back, and thrice the foe drew near. Just in that instant, anxious Ariel sought the close recesses of the virgin's fort. As on the nosegate in the breast reclined, he watched the ideas rising in the mind. Suddenly viewed, in spite of all her art, an earthly lover lurking at her heart. Amazed, confused, he found his power expired, resigned to fate, with a sight retired. The pier now spreads the glittering forfax white, having closed the lock, now joins it to the white. Even when, before the fatal engine closed, and rich sylph to fondly interpose, fate urged the shears and cut the sylphs in train, but every substance soon unites again. The meeting points with sacred hair dissever from the fair head, forever and forever. Then flashed the living lightnings from her eyes, and screams of horror ran through their frightened skies. Not louder shrieks the battering heaven are cast, when husband or when lapdogs breathe their last, or when rich china vessels fallen from high, in glittering dust and painted fragments lie. Let refs of triumph now my temples twine, the victor cried, the glorious prize is mine. By efficient streams or birds' delight in air, or in a coach and six the British fair, as long as Atlantis shall be reed, or a small pillow grace a lady's bed, while visits shall be paid on solemn days, when numerous wracklets and bright order blaze, when nymphs take treats, or assignations give, so long my honour, name, and praise shall live. What time would spare from steel receives its state, and monuments like men submit to fate. Steel could the labour of the gods destroy, and strike the dust imperial towers of Troy. Steel could the works of mortal pride confound, and hew triumphal arches to the ground. What a wonder when, fair nymph, thy hair should feel the conquering force of unresisted steel! Part 4. But anxious carols the pensive nymph oppressed, and secret passions laboured in her breast. Not youthful kings in battle ceased alive, not scornful virgins who were charms survive, not ardent lovers robed of all their bliss, not ancient ladies when refused a kiss, not tyrants fierce that unrepenting die, not Cynthia when Amantius pinned Evra. Here failed such rage, resentment, and despair, as those said a virgin for her vanished hair. For at that moment when the souls withdrew you and Ariel weeping from Belinda flew, Umbria, the dusky melancholy sprite, as ever styled the fairy face of light, down to the central earth as proper scene, prepares to search the gloomy cave of Splin. Swift on his sooty pinions flits the gnome, and in a vapour reached the dismal dome. No cheerful breeze the silent region knows, the dreadful east is all the wind that blows. Here in the grotto, sheltering close from air, and screened in shades from day detested glare, she sighs for ever on her pensive bed, pain at her side, a myrtle at her head. Two handmaids wait the throne, alike in place, but differing far in figure and in face. Here stood ill nature like an ancient maid, her wrinkled form in black and white arrayed, with store of prayers for mornings, nights, and noons. Her hand is filled, her bosom with lampoons. The affection with the sickly mien shows in her cheek the roses of 18. Practised to lisp and hang the head aside, faint into airs and languishes with pride. On the rich quilt sings, with becoming woe, wrapped in a gnome, for sickness and for show. The fair ones felt such malades at ease, when each new night-dress gives a new disease. A constant vapour over the palace flies, strange phantoms rising as the mists arise. Dreadful as hermits' dreams and haunted shades, or bright as visions of expiring maids. Now glaring fiends and snakes on rolling spires, pale spectres, gaping tombs and purple fires, nor lakes of liquid gold, Elysian scenes, and crystal dooms, and angels in machines. Unnumbered throngs on every side are seen, of bodies changed to various forms by spleen. Here living teapots stand, one arm held out, one bent, the handle whiz and with the spout. A pipe can wear, like Homer's tripod walks, here sights ajar, and where goose pie talks. Man proof of child, a powerful fancy works, and maids turned bottles call aloud for corks. Safe passed the gnome through this fantastic band, a branch of healing spleen word in his hand, when Russ addressed a poor hale wayward queen, who rule the sex to 50 from 15, parent of vapours and of female wit, who gives the hysterical or poetic fit, on various tempers act by various ways, make some take physic, others scribble plays, who cause the proud their visits to delay, and send the godly in a preter to pray. A nymph there is that all thy power disdained, and thousand more in equal mirth maintains. But oh, if e'er the gnome could spoil a grace, or raise a pimple on a beauteous face, like citron waters matron's cheek inflame, or change complexions of a losing game. If e'er with airy horns it planted heats, or rumpled petticoats, or tumbled beds, or caused suspicion when the soul was rude, or discomposed the headdress of a prude, or yet to conceived lapdog gave disease, which not the tears of brightest eyes could ease. Hear me, and touch Belinda with charging, that single act gives half a world of spleen. The goddess with a discontent air seems to reject him, while she grants his prayer. The wondrous bag with both her hands she binds, like wet where once Ulysses had a winds, where she collects the force of female lungs, sighs, sobs, and passions, and the war of tongues. A vial next she fills with fainting fears, soft sorrows melting griefs, and flowing tears. Gnome rejoicing bears the gift away, spreads his black wings, and slowly moans to day. Sunk in Phalastra's arms the nymph he found, her eyes dejected and her hair unbound. Full over their heads the swelling back he rent, and all the furies issued at the wind. Belinda burns with more than mortal ire, and fears Phalastra's fans a rising fire. A wretched maid, she spread her hands and cried, while Hampton's echoes wretched maid replied, was it for which you took such constant care, the bodkin, comb, and essence to prepare? Or with your locks and paper durance bound? Or with torturing irons wretched around? Or with fillets strained your tender hand, and bravely bore the double loads of lead? Gods, shall the ravisher display your hair, while the fops envy, and the ladies stare? Honour forbid, at whose unrivalled shrine, ease, pleasure, virtue, all our sex resign. Your things already eye your tears away, already hear the horrid things we say, already see you a degraded host, and all your honour in a whisper lost. How shall I, when your helpless fame defend, 'twill when be infamy to seem your friend, and shall this prize, the inestimable prize, expose the crystal to the gazing eyes, and heighten it by the diamond's circling rays, under the rapier's hand forever blaze? Sooner shall grass and Hyde Park circus grow, and wits take longings in the sound of bow. Sooner let earth, air, sea to chaos fall, men, monkeys, lapdogs, parrot, perish all. She said, when raking to Sir Plume repairs, and bides her pure demand with precious hairs. Sir Plume of amber snuff-box justly vain, and the nice conduct of a clouded cane. With earnest eyes and round unthinking face, he first the snuff-box opened when the case, and thus broke out, "My lord, why, what the devil? This is a damned lock. For glad you must be civil. Plug on't, 'tis past the jest. My primitive box, give her the hair," he spoke, and rapped his box. "It grieves me much," replied the peer again, "who speaks so well should ever speak in vain. But by this lock, the sacred lock, I swear, which nevermore shall join its parted hair, which nevermore its honour shall renew, clipped from the lovely head where late it grew. Where the while my nostrils draw the vital air, this hand which won it shall forever wear." He spoke, and speaking in proud triumph spread the long-contended honours of a head. But Umbriel, hateful gnome, forbears not so. He breaks the wild winds the source floor. When see, the nimble and beauteous grief appears, eyes half languishing, half dropped in tears. On her heft bosom hung a drooping head, which with a sigh she raised, and was she said, "Forever cursed to be with detested day, which snatched my best, my favourite curl away. Happier 10 times happier had I been, if Hampton court whose eyes had never seen. Yet am not I the first mistaken made, by love of courts to numerous ills betrayed. Oh, had I rather unadmired remained in some lone isle, or distant northern land, where the guild's chariot never marks her way, where none learned ombre, none near taste mohair, where keep my charms concealed from mortal eye, like roses within deserts bloom and die, would move my mind with youthful lords to roam. Oh, had I stayed and sang my praise at home, twas with the morning elms seemed to tell, thrice from my rambling hand the patchbox fell, the trotting china shock without a wind. Nay, poets said mute and shock was most unkind, as swift to warm me at the threats of fate, music visions no belief too late. See the poor remnants of his slighted hairs, the hand shall rend what e'en the rapier spares. Wreaths into sabre ringlets torn to break, once give new beauties to the snowy neck. The sister lock nor sits uncaught alone, and in its fellow fate foresees its own. Uncurled it hangs the fatal shears demands, and once more the sacrilegious heads. Our heads were cruel, being content to cease, hairs less in sight, or any hairs but wheeze. Part 5. She said, the betraying audience melt in tears, but fate and Jove had stopped the baron's ears, and vain Philestus with reproach assails, who can move when Fabelinda fails? Not half to fix the Trojan could remain, while Anna Becton did rage and wane, and great Clarissa graceful waved the fan, as since Enjuden was the nymph began. Say why are beauties praised and honoured most, the wise man's passion and the vain man's toast, where decked with all the land and sea afford, where angels called and angel-like adored, where round our coaches crowned with white glove views, where boasts the sidebox from its inmost rose. How vain are all these glories, all our pains, unless good sense preserve what beauty gains. But man may say, when we the front box grace, behold the first in virtue as in face. Of to dance all night and dress all day, charm the smallpox, or chase old age away. Who would not scorn what huskful cares produce, or who would learn one earthly thing of use? To patch I ogle might become a saint, nor could I sure be such a sin to paint. But since, alas, for beauty must he say, curled or uncurled, since locks will turn to grey, since paint or not paint, all shall fade, and she who scorns a man must die a maid. What then remains but will our power to use, and keep good humour still, whatever we lose? And trust me, dear, good humour can prevail when airs and flights and screams and scolding fail. Beauty's in vain where pretty eyes may roll, charms strike the sight, but merit wins the soul. So spoke the dame, but no applause ensued. Belinda frowned, Philestus court approved. To arms! The fierce Virgo cries, and swift as lightning to the combat flies. All side in parties and begin the attack. Fans clap, silks rustle, and the whalebones crack. Heroes and heroines shouts confusedly rise, and bass and treble voices strike the skies. No common weapons in their hands are found. Like gods they fight, let read a mortal wound. So when bold Homer makes the gods engage, and heavenly breast with human passions rage, against Pallas, Mars, Latona, Hermes arms, and all Olympus rings with loud alarms. Jove's thunder roars, heaven trembles all around, blue Neptune storms, the bellowing deeps resound, earth shakes her nodding toes, the ground gives way, and the pale ghosts start at the flash of day. Triumphant Umbriel on the scone's hedge clapped his glad wings, and sated to you the fight, propped on the bodkin spears, the sprites survey the growing combat, or assist the fray. While through the press in rage Philestus flies, and scatters death around from both her eyes. A pure and witting perished in the throng, one died in metaphor and one in song. A cruel nymph, a living death I bear, quite dip her wit and sunk beside his chair. A mournful glance, so flopping upwards cast, was eyes are made so killing, was his last. Thus on meanders flower margin lies the experienced one, and as he sinks he dies. When both the plume had drawn Clarissa down, Chloe stepped in and killed him with a frown. She smiled to see the doughty hero slain, but at her smile the bier revived again. Now Jove suspends his golden scales in air, weights the man's wits against the lady's hair. The doubtful beam long knots from side to side, at length the wits mount up, the hair subside. See fierce Belinda on the baron flies, with more than usual lightning in her eyes. Nor feared the chief the unequal fight to try, who sought no more when on his foe to die. But this bold lord, with manly strength endued, she, with one finger and a thumb subdued. Just where the breath of life his nostrils drew, a charge of snuff through a willy virgin threw. The gnomes direct to every atom just, the pungent grains of titillating dust. Sudden, with starring tears, each eye overflows, and the high doom re-echoes to his nose. No meat thy fate, incest, Belinda cried, and drew a deadly bodkin from sight. The same's ancient personage to deck, a great-great-grandson wore about his neck, in 3 seal rings, which, after melted down, formed the last buckle for his widow's gown. Her infant grandname's whistle next his crew, the bell she jingled and the whistle blew, when in the bodkin graced her mother's hairs, which long she wore, no Belinda wears. Boast not my fall, he cried, insulting foe, woe by some other shall be laid as low. Nor think to die dejects my lovely mind. All that I dread is leaving you behind. Rather when so, let me still survive, and burn in Cupid's flames, but burn alive. Restore the lock, she cries, and all around, restore the lock, the holding roofs rebound. Not fierce Othello in so low the strain roared for the handkerchief, but see how of ambitious aims are crossed, and she's content till all the prize is lost. The lock obtained with guilt and kept with pain, and every place is sought, but sought in vain. With such a prize no mortal must be blessed, so heaven decrees, with heaven who can contest? Some thought it mounted to the lunar sphere, since all things lost on earth are treasured aware. Their heroes' wits are kept in ponderous vases and beers and snuff-boxes and tweezer cases, where broken woes and death-bed arms are found, and lovers' hearts with end of ribbon bones, where courtesies' promises and sick men's prayers, with smiles of harlots and the tears of hears, cage for gnats and chains to yoke a flea, diary butterflies and tombs of casuistry. But trust the muse she saw at upward rise, were marked by none but quick poetic eyes. So Rome's great founder to the heaven withdrew, to Proculus alone confessed in view. A sudden star, it shot for liquid air, and you behind a radiant trail of hair. And Berenice's locks first rose so bright, the heavens bespangling with dishevelled light. The serfs behold its kingdom as it flies, and pleased pursue its progress through the skies. This the pure wonder shall from the morns away, and hail with music its propitious ray. This the blessed lover shall for Venus take, and send a voice from Rosamond's lake. This partridge soon shall view in cloudless skies, when next he looks through Galileo's eyes. And hence the egregious wizard shall foredoom the fate of Lewis and the fall of Rome. When she's bright nymph to mourn the ravished hair, which adds new glory to the shining sphere. Not all the tresses that fair head can boast shall draw such envy as the lock you lost. For after all the murders of your eye, when after millions slain yourself shall die, and those fair suns shall set, as set they must, and all those tresses shall be laid in dust. This lock the muse shall consecrate to fame, and midst the stars inscribe Belinda's name.